Topic sentences, English 101. Your topic sentence should give a main idea, a governing idea, where the paragraph will go, and your attitude toward the subject. You don't have to have all three in the topic sentence. You can go with just one, but in academic papers we do look for all three. If you decide to ride on the attitude alone, you'll need some good support in the paragraph itself. We'll take two topics, Thanksgiving and Tim O'Brien, a writer whose stories about Vietnam made him famous. And we'll begin with Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is closely related to harvest festivals that had long been a traditional holiday in much of Europe. Here's a topic sentence. It should set us up to talk about the relationship between American Thanksgivings and European ones. Thanksgiving is closely related to harvest festivals that had long been a traditional holiday in much of Europe. The first North American celebration of these festivals by English colonists was held in Newfoundland by Martin Frobisher and the Frobisher Expedition in 1578. On December 4th, 1619, after a 3-month voyage in the Margaret, some 38 colonists from England disembarked at last in Virginia. They too held a festival celebration in the New World as a first activity. So we did this in the order that most of us know it, English colonists first. Let's keep going. We'll add the Spanish expeditions. But prior to the English arrivals, there were Spanish expeditions that held Thanksgiving feasts. Of these, Francisco Vázquez de Coronado joined together with the friendly Taya Indians on the 23rd of May, 1541, in Texas's Palo Duro Canyon to celebrate his expedition's discovery of food supplies. On September 8th, 1565, in St. Augustine, Pedro Menendez de Avalos and his men shared a feast with the natives. So we added something about the Spanish since they got to the New World even earlier. And then we can add the last sentence to wrap it up. Clearly, the Thanksgiving feast was an important European tradition. Now we have something that hangs together, but can it be improved? Well, let's see if we can give a little bit more direction to this, and let's push the time element a little bit harder. So we've revised our topic sentence to say, Thanksgiving was a custom so dear to Europeans, particularly to the Spanish and the English, that they carried it with them to the New World and instituted it immediately upon arrival. Now we have direction, and we have kind of a attitude because we have the phrase so dear, and we know who's going to be talked about, so we have our direction, and we kind of have our governing idea as well. So this hits all the marks. And as I said, we're going to push the time element. So this time, we're going to put the Spanish before the English. So the Spanish description we have in 1541 and 1565. And then the English come again in 1578 and 1619, and then we add the Pilgrims in 1621. So now we have the whole thing in time order, and we've put the Spanish in front of the English. But let's take one more look at this, and I'm going to reread it now, because we've added some time words and transitional words. Thanksgiving was a custom so dear to Europeans, particularly to the Spanish and the English, that they carried it with them to the New World and instituted it immediately upon arrival. Well before the familiar English Pilgrim feast, the early Spanish expeditions held Thanksgiving feasts. Of these, Francisco Vázquez de Coronado joined together with the friendly Taya Indians on the 23rd of May, 1541, in Texas's Palo Duro Canyon to celebrate his expedition's discovery of food supplies. Another such event occurred a quarter century later, on September 8, 1565, in St. Augustine, when Pedro Menendez de Avalos landed. He and his men shared a feast with the natives. The celebration of these festivals by English colonists was still later, first in Newfoundland by Martin Frobisher and the Frobisher Expedition in 1578. Then, in the next century, on December 4, 1619, after a 3-month voyage in the Margaret, some 38 colonists from England disembarked at last in Virginia. Finally, the Puritan Pilgrims held their first Thanksgiving in 1621. Clearly, the Thanksgiving feast was an important European tradition established quite early in the New World. So that puts the whole thing together with chronology, with good transitions between events, and it gives us kind of markers as a reader to understand what came first, what came second, how the whole thing unfolded. But we can make a change to the topic sentence now, and we can shorten it up, and we can give it a little bit more attitude than direction. Thanksgiving is much older than most Americans know, and the whole paragraph can follow, and so we're pushing the attitude a bit harder than direction with this sentence. And we can do one more version of that. We can go, most readers don't know the secret history of Thanksgiving. Well, okay, I'm not sure how many people really care about the secret history of Thanksgiving, but you can introduce your subject that way, and if people are likely to be hooked by that, then you really have to lean in on those transition phrases to help the reader understand that you are going to unfold this in time. All right, so that's 3 examples of Thanksgiving. That's a paragraph revised so that you can understand what we're doing as we're revising, and we're swapping in and out ideas so that you can kind of see that you can do that. You can swap in and out versions of a topic sentence. All right, let's move on to Tim O'Brien. He's a pretty famous American author. His short story collection that many students have encountered is called The Things They Carried. And I have an example from a student paper that I'd like to show you, and we're going to revise that student's paper considerably. So here's our topic sentence. In Tim O'Brien's life, he went through certain things that influenced his writing. Okay, it's not a great topic sentence, but we're going to go with it for the moment. In Tim O'Brien's life, he went through certain things that influenced his writing. In 1968, he graduated summa cum laude from Malacaster College in St. Paul with a degree in political science. Immediately afterward, he was drafted into the Army. O'Brien was very much against the war, but reported to his duty. Summarizing that decision later, O'Brien said, "I was a coward. I went to war." So you can see I've highlighted some time words that help us see what happened when. And then we're going to add a little bit more. O'Brien was in what they called the unlucky American division, which had engaged in the My Lai massacre. My Lai, he said, was an evil place. There he felt the wickedness that soaks into your blood and heats up and starts to sizzle. That's a good detail, and that makes this paragraph start to get interesting. Now we'll add a little bit more. After leaving the Army in 1970, he went to Harvard Graduate School. O'Brien later left Harvard to take up an offer to be an intern with the Washington Post as a newspaper reporter. Soon, O'Brien moved from reporter to novelist when his first book, If I Die in a Combat Zone, Box Me Up and Ship Me Home, was published. So that wraps up the paragraph, but we still have that opening sentence that's not doing so much for us. Let's take the idea of wretched. Tim O'Brien's wretched and unwilling participation in the Vietnam War became the heart of his first book. And that gives us a very different opening, and it directs us from beginning to end. It tells us after he graduated, he went to the Army, he was unwilling, and that's became what he became a novelist after he became a journalist. So that gives us direction all the way through the paragraph. Here's another version. Tim O'Brien's writing life, like so many of his contemporaries, is inextricably linked to his inability to resist American military authority. Now that gives you a sense that you're going to be talking about Tim O'Brien in comparison to other writers on the Vietnam War, other people who objected but nevertheless went. So you can take your pick according to what you want to emphasize. His personal journey, being unwilling to go but having gone, and his journey compared to other people's journeys. Either way, you can use this paragraph or either of these topic sentences. So as I said, there are just a number of examples of ways you can swap in and out paragraph topic sentences to get different effects. You think about whether or not you want to be dominated by governing idea and direction and attitude, or you want to lean a little bit more toward attitude. That will give you some options as you are writing.